people find it hard to synthesize an opinion out of facts.
Hmm.
What do you think is the like best way to go about it? Like for example, we talked about ki you have to make your subject interesting.
Hmm.
So how do people form their opinions, and how do you find the confidence to bring that opinion in front of people? Because that's also something that people are scared of a lot. कि मैं ये
Yeah.
बोलूंगा तो कैसा लगेगा, क्या बोलेंगे,
Hmm.
आगे वाला क्या सोचेगा, all those kind of things. So how do you go
Yeah.
about it?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. I think how to synthesize something and how to present it, how to communicate it,
Yeah.
right? So synthesizing is something that comes with a lot of practice, I think, number one. Number one, it comes with a lot of practice and a lot of thinking. So, I mean, I'm not going to be able to tell a formula to do it. It is
Hmm.
something that everyone has to do it themselves. But lot of practice means whenever you are writing something, whenever you are writing a piece of essay or you're
Hmm.
writing an answer, I think go back to it a few times and try to read what you've written and try to understand from a very neutral point of view what you've written,
Hmm.
or try to get a perspective from someone else on what you've written.
Hmm.
So let's say you are writing about you know let's say you are thinking about farmers protests that happened a few years last year.
Last
That
year.
so what was so there will be a lot of political opinions floating around
Yeah.
that, right? But that is where the job of a good aspirant comes in, to clear those political opinions out and to look at the facts, to look at, first of all, okay, what is the three, four things that the government is trying to do, right?
Hmm.
So that is first try to understand that, okay, problem is what? Farmers' incomes are not enough. They have
Hmm.
stagnated over the last whatever number of years, 50 years, 30 years. What is the agriculture growth rate in these number of years,
Hmm.
right? Then you try to understand what are the problems faced in agriculture marketing. There is a system where farmers sell these products to their produce to markets, and from there it goes further to end consumers. So
Hmm.
how is this chain built? So first of all, try to understand the actual fundamental foundation of the
Operational
topic you're studying.
principles.
Yes, operational principles. Unless you understand them, there is no point of coming to a conclusion, because that will be
Very
political
true.
or random something. So
Hmm.
try to just understand absolute basic stuff in basic language and try to just boil it down to basics. Don't try to be like इतने metric ton ये production हुआ, उससे कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता. It doesn't matter. In the big picture of things, problem क्या है? Agriculture income stagnate हो गई, production stagnate हो गया है, value addition नहीं है, और बहुत सारा मार्केट जो मार्केट लिंकेजेस है वो बहुत पुअर है. यू नो
Hmm.
दैट इज व्हाट इवेंचुअली इट बॉइल्स डाउन टू दैट. और
Hmm.
उसके ऊपर फिर गवर्नमेंट थॉट अबाउट ए पर्टिकुलर सॉल्यूशंस टू दैट एंड ब्रॉट ए एक्ट which address those solutions. Then you read, okay, this is what government has brought out, these 5 points.
Hmm.
And then you try to understand, is it going to solve what the actual farm protest, farmers problems are? What government is proposing, is it going to solve in your view?
Hmm.
बिल्कुल theoretical भी हो सकता है आपका. I'm not asking you to obviously, because you're an aspirant, you can't
Yeah.
possibly go out in the agriculture field and figure these things out. So theoretical, does it make sense
मतलब
before
still
reading
again.
any opinions? और उसके बाद आपको खुद ही आंसर मिल जाएगा कि भाई, हाँ, यहाँ पे लकूनाज हैं, यहाँ पे प्रॉब्लम्स रह गई, यहाँ
Hmm.
पे नहीं, यहाँ पे एड्रेस करी थी प्रॉब्लम्स एक्ट में, एंड यू विल बी एबल टू फिगर आउट योर ओन ओपिनियन. ये तो हो गया एक पार्ट. लाइक, डज दैट मेक सेंस टू यू व्हाट आई एम सेइंग?
Absolutely does. I think the entire time you gave the example of the farm protest, which is a lot more recent. You
हम्म.
take this example exactly and apply it to that question that we were discussing, which was battles of Panipat.
हम्म.
You're not going to go on the ground and figure out कि भैया पानीपत में क्यों हुआ.
Yeah, exactly. It is
you have to
not
you have to
possible.
learn and think out about the basics of कि warfare क्या हो रहा था, what was the objective, what are these people trying to achieve, and once you try and
Exactly.
figure that out, you will understand why it happened in Panipat. कि पानीपत
Yeah.
lies between the two different river systems. कि
Yeah.
इंडस रिवर सिस्टम क्रॉस कर लिया है तुमने, सो मीनिंग दैट पार्ट इज विद यू, कि मतलब ये तुमने कॉन्कर कर लिया अभी. बट लाइक टू
Hmm.
कॉन्कर द नेक्स्ट सिस्टम यू हैव टू क्रॉस द यमुना.
Yeah.
And to get to the Yamuna, the current powers that be in Yamuna are fighting you to stop you from getting there at Panipat.
Yeah, exactly. So geography, right?
Hmm.
Geography comes into. So this was not a history question. It
मतलब
was
but
actually.
understand कि भाई
Yeah.
क्या हो रहा है, ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या है, why are people doing this,
Yeah.
right? Till the time you don't understand कि farmers का income stagnate कर रहा है, कि भैया farm का productivity decline कर रहा है, कि भैया जो बना रहे हो बिक नहीं रहा है, जब तक तुम्हें ये दिक्कतें नहीं समझ आएंगी तब तक तुम फार्म लॉस के ऊपर कभी भी इन्फॉर्म डिस्कशन कर ही नहीं पाओगे.
नहीं कर पाओगे. एग्जैक्टली exactly. और कई बार क्या होता है ना, पीपल स्टार्ट अवे right away get into the answers rather than the problem,
एग्जैक्टली,
understanding the problem.
दे
So
जस्ट
you
लाइक
are,
स्ट्रेट अवे दे डिस्कसिंग कि भैया ये पॉलिसी सही है नहीं है, ऐसे होना चाहिए वैसे होना चाहिए। तुम
हाँ,
कोर पे आओ, व्हाट इज द कोर?
कोर पे, कोर पे कुछ फैक्ट समझो उनको,
हम्म।
उनके बारे में थोड़ा सा अंडरस्टैंड करो. सो दैट्स व्हाई आई ऑलवेज टेल लॉट ऑफ एस्पिरेंट्स आल्सो दैट एडिटोरियल व्हेनेवर यू आर रीडिंग बी वेरी केयरफुल.
हम्म।
I don't think editorials are a very good way to form opinions. They should be just a way for you to get certain facts that you
हम्म।
need to make good decisions. So don't treat them as a this thing, कि अच्छा यहाँ से मेरे को आंसर्स मिल जाएंगे मेरे प्रॉब्लम मेरे क्वेश्चन के. तो अब कितने, and people who are writing editorials have opinions. They
हम्म।
might be experts from certain fields. They might be
They
left or
spend
right
10
wing, whatever.
years to write that editorial. People don't see the 10 years.
Exactly. वो उनको बस
वो सिर्फ
उनको
वो
कितने
एडिटोरियल
अंडर,
दिख रहा है ना, उसके पीछे
उनको
10 साल,
एडिटोरियल.
15, 20 साल, 50 साल का करियर था जो which gave them that insight to write that editorial and sound so convincing. But you're
हाँ.
simply convinced because you read a very good argument. That's it.
Exactly, exactly. So you have to be very careful. So, like Battle of Panipat, right? Like it is something that this question will not occur to 99.99% of students who are reading history, that why
Hmm.
a certain battle happened somewhere, right? Because obviously it's very difficult to think of that question. But when it appears in front of you in the exam,
Hmm.
your mind should work towards the fact that मैंने सब कुछ पढ़ा है, ठीक है, बैटल ऑफ पानीपत के बारे में, बट क्वेश्चन क्या पूछ रहा है, व्हाई.
Hmm.
और मुझे वाई के बारे में फिर सोचना चाहिए कि अच्छा लोकेशन यहाँ पर है, ये रिवर सिस्टम है, दिल्ली के
Yeah.
पास है, दिल्ली से कैसे. हाँ, मतलब सब कुछ ये सब चीजें ही समझ के. तो आई थिंक लॉट ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स आर कैरिड अवे बाय इंफॉर्मेशन एंड
Hmm.
कैरिड अवे बाय मटेरियल्स दैट आर प्रोवाइडेड. ये ले लो, ये बुक ले लो, ये खरीद लो, है ना, ये वाली ऐप डाउनलोड कर लो, उसमें ये ऐसे पढ़ने को मिल जाएगा. आई एम
Very
लाइक
true.
ये, हाँ, यार टॉपर्स पिछले 50 साल से बन रहे हैं, जो भी है, मतलब पीपल आर
Hmm.
गेटिंग सेलेक्टेड वट एवर, राइट. एंड it's, I think the process still remains pretty much the same. I think पढ़ाई तो वैसी ही है और उसी तरह से चल रही है, ज्यादा बहुत डिफरेंस नहीं
I don't think the process has fundamentally changed for any competitive exam for that matter,
है.
or like,
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
it's not just competitive exams. I think अगर यही iterative process हम लेके चले, so this is
Hmm.
the same basic process that you follow for anything and everything. Like for example, there's this guy called Ray Dalio. Have you heard of him?
Yeah, I've heard of the
So
Ray
Ray
Dalio.
Dalio is a great Bridgewater Associates guy. He's the founder.
Hmm.
Used to be CEO. Now he's retired. He's chilling, like 70s में guy, and like he have this 5 step process. It's like do something, figure
Hmm.
out what worked, and like figure out what didn't work, do it better
Hmm.
next time, repeat.
Hmm.
But that's
So
that's that's it.
that like summarizes the entire, like,
Whether
it
be
just
it
simplifies.
UPSC journey, be it doing a startup, be it like anything. But the
Yeah.
hard part is, which gets lost in the simplicity, is it's very
Hmm.
hard to figure out what worked. It's very hard to figure out what didn't work, right?
Yeah,
कि
yeah.
जैसे आंसर राइटिंग की अगर बात कर रहे हैं तो वन ऑफ द मोस्ट मतलब लेटेस्ट ट्रेंड्स दैट आई सी एंड हियर इन द मार्केट आर कि पीपल आस्क मी कि मैं प्री प्रिपेयर्ड कंक्लूजन्स एंड इंट्रोडक्शंस रट के चला जाऊं क्या, कि मैंने 50 कंक्लूजन 50 इंट्रो मैंने बना लिए, मैं रट के इसको जाऊंगा, मतलब बढ़िया रहेगा ना? एंड आई एम ऑलवेज आई लुक
Seriously,
एट,
this is happening. Like
it's
this
happening.
is.
It's something very real. People ask me this so many times, and a lot of major institutes are doing it. And then people question me कि भाई आप ठीक से नहीं पढ़ा रहे हो, आप मेरे को 50 इंट्रो और कंक्लूजन नहीं दिया आपने। मैंने कहा यार ये that's not how it works. And
आई एम श्योर कि तुम दे सकते हो, मतलब तुम्हारे को
मैं
क्या है, इट्स
मैं
सो
100
इजी
दे
फॉर यू.
दूंगा, but I don't feel you'll gain anything out of it because this will just become another piece of information जो तुम्हें रट्टा मारना है।
या,
जब तुम्हारा
या,
दिमाग नहीं चलना चालू हुआ तो मतलब अगर तुम्हारा दिमाग चल रहा है तो तुम्हें मेरी जरूरत ही नहीं है वो 50 बनाने के लिए, यू विल मेक देम योरसेल्फ। बट अगर
हाँ,
तुम्हारा दिमाग नहीं चल रहा है तो ये 50 चीज और हो गई जो तुम्हें रट के जानी है, विच इज जस्ट लाइक नॉट सॉल्विंग द प्रॉब्लम फॉर यू बिकॉज द प्रॉब्लम जस्ट बिकम्स बिगर। तुम्हें और चीज मिल रही है रट्टा मारने के लिए, एंड लाइक
हाँ.
दैट्स नॉट गोना लेसन द बर्डन एनीवेयर।
Let me tell everyone who's watching this, like that I know a lot of people who have cleared UPSC. Obviously my batch, so many people are there. People have not. I don't think most of the 99% of them have ever rectified 50 conclusions, intros or whatever and have made it. उन्होंने सीखी है आंसर राइटिंग. ठीक है, किसी की ज्यादा अच्छी हो सकती है, किसी की कम अच्छी हो सकती है, दैट इज देयर. ठीक है, क्योंकि हर किसी की, और आंसर राइटिंग इज नॉट द एंड ऑफ द लाइफ. सम पीपल आर स्मार्टर देन मी who probably who are not even might not have been selected in UPSC. I agree to that. There is nothing.
मतलब
Yeah, so
UPSC, like all other government schemes, has inclusion and exclusion errors, right?
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, it does. And the process is such. So I feel that the students who are watching this, aspirants who are watching this, please don't do this. This is horrible.
Hmm.
You will lose out a lot of. You will actually, you are being dishonest to yourself. एट द एंड ऑफ द डे क्या है कि आपको मिल जाएंगे ये सब, अभिजीत प्रोवाइड कर सकता है, कोई भी प्रोवाइड कर सकता है, बट वो मॉरली रॉन्ग है। और
It's not morally wrong. It's more like कि यार तुम्हारा अगर दिमाग चल रहा है, that's the same thing
हाँ।
as कि जो एडिटोरियल वाली हम बात कर रहे थे, तुम सिर्फ अगर एडिटोरियल का एंड प्रोडक्ट देख रहे हो, you're like, oh my god, this person has written such great lines that you can use directly in your answer,
या
then you're simply increasing the inventory of things that you have to remember in order to be able to use them in the exam. But if you understood something, so but you don't really need to know the exact dates of the Battle of the Panipat. You don't really need to know कि भैया मतलब who was fighting which side. You know why it matters. You
या
understand the consequence of this battle. You understand the importance of this battle, and because of that, you'll be able to answer that question in a 10 different ways,
या
right?
एग्जैक्टली।
But अब अगर तुम सिर्फ वही याद करने की कोशिश कर रहे हो, तो देन यू विल रिमेंबर दोस थ्री थिंग्स की लाइक फर्स्ट बैटल ऑफ पानीपत, सेकंड बैटल ऑफ पानीपत, थर्ड बैटल ऑफ पानीपत, एंड लाइक फर्स्ट वन हैपेंड इन आई थिंक 1520, देन सेकंड हैपेंड इन 1555, देन लाइक थर्ड इन लाइक 1760s समथिंग. तो दैट्स द आइडिया कि तुम्हें डेट रटना है, रटो, फाइन, बट लाइक दैट्स नॉट गोना
Fine.
हेल्प यू.
Yeah, it's not going to help you. And see, at the end of the day, what also matters is that the UPSC examiner is going to see through it very easily.
या.
I think a lot of people know every year. This has been happening for years and years, decades. UPSC
हम्म.
comes out of the paper that no coaching institutes can ever replicate. Let it be prelims or let it be mains. तो अगर बच्चों को लगता है कि वो पर्टिकुलर 50 रट के चले जाओगे
हम्म.
और आप वो लिख भी दोगे, डंप करोगे इन्फॉर्मेशन, बिकॉज ऑब्वियसली यू हैव नॉट थॉट थ्रू इट,
हाँ.
examiner is going to see it, and when he sees it, he is going to give you a zero over there because he knows that you don't know anything, you're not thinking about it.
हम्म.
So learn how to think, and learning how to think
इज अ
is
हार्ड
now, like,
प्रॉब्लम.
yeah, it's a hard thing, and you have to do hard things to get through this exam. There is no shortcut.
एब्सोल्युटली ट्रू एंड एब्सोल्युटली एग्री विद यू कि ये कुछ हार्ड चीजें हैं. एंड मतलब नाउ समटाइम्स आई फील वियर्ड सेइंग दिस आउट लाउड, बट आई एम लाइक टेलिंग पीपल कि भाई स्ट्रगल विद दिस, स्पेंड
Hmm.
टाइम, इफ यू नॉट गेटिंग इट जस्ट लाइक स्ट्रगल विद दैट सब्जेक्ट. धक्का मारो उसको, देखो एक बार फिर से पढ़ के क्या हुआ, नहीं हुआ, क्यों नहीं समझ आया, क्या हुआ. जस्ट लाइक जब तक तुम एंगेज नहीं करोगे, जब तक तुम लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल लाइक दिस बुक दैट आई हैव ओवर हियर इज द जीनियोलॉजी ऑफ मॉरल्स बाय नीचे.
Hmm.
When you read Nietzsche, he is a very dense scholar. Like
Hmm.
he tells you
It's
a lot.
difficult to read. Yeah.
Very difficult to read because he'll give you a lot of information in just like one paragraph. You can keep thinking about that paragraph and you'll start still think about कि अच्छा और भी क्या भाई पता नहीं क्या क्या बोल गया ये.
Hmm.
And this is one of those books which like sort of blew me away when I read it for the first time, because he's talking about the fact that the morality of society किस तरीके से शुरू हुई, किस तरीके से आज चल रही है. मतलब इन हिज टाइम ऑब्वियसली ही रोट फॉर हिज टाइम 1850 60 70s.
Hmm.
उस तक समय कैसी चल रही है, हाउ इट शुड बी, ही इज टॉकिंग अबाउट दोस काइंड्स ऑफ थिंग्स. एंड
Hmm.
इफ यू आर नॉट थिंकिंग, दिस जस्ट बिकम्स एन ओपिनियन पीस कि भैया हाँ वो बाबा जी आए थे, कुछ वो बोल के गए, बहुत सारी चीजें.
Yeah. Yeah.
अगर तुम्हारा दिमाग चल रहा है, so then you'll do the same thing, then you'll try and apply it to your present situation, then you'll figure out
Yeah.
the transition that he's talking about from, let's say, ancient morality, which was the morality of the Roman Empire, to the morality of Christianity, and to present day morality. Well, there are
Hmm.
different sets of moral values that are pervading through life.
Yeah.
So once you start understanding that, once you start applying things over there, you feel कि हाँ मतलब you've gained something out of it. कि अब मेरे को ethics के पेपर में कोई सवाल आएगा तो at least I'm very clear on कि मतलब where do I stand? Do I agree
Yeah.
with these set of moral values? Do I agree with these set of moral values, or do I have like completely different set of moral values?
Hmm.
But the thing is, people get stuck on remembering the definition of moral values, and वो definition लिख के फिर बोले पता नहीं they're expecting कि कुछ हो जाएगा, which
हाँ.
I
No,
find like absolutely sad.
yeah, totally. No, I totally on board with this. So, of course, you don't have to read all the philosophers in detail, right? That
Yes.
it's not
This
physically
is this is
possible.
this is not recommended at all.
Huh. This is your personal, you are reading it, you
हाँ
like
मतलब
philosophy,
this
right?
was something that I did in my own time. मेरे को
Yeah.
पढ़ना in general पसंद है, so I'm just like reading random things.
So, but that being said, you should understand why they have an ethics paper.
Hmm.
What are the things they have given in the ethics paper? What are the topics they have given in the ethics paper? And you should try to understand, okay, if they're asking you about, probity in governance.
Hmm.
So probity in governance, you can read the definition and you can just memorize that definition and a couple of examples, right?
Hmm.
But you have to go beyond that. You have to understand why probity in governance is important, when it goes out of the window, when it doesn't, what are the practical problems, और ये सब पर वही है कि एक क्वेश्चनिंग होनी चाहिए अंतर
Hmm.
and you should relate it with your present scenario. Probity in maybe 1850s was different, 1700s was different,
Yeah.
1600s फिर मोनार्कीज होती थी, उनका क्या probity होता था
Exactly. कि
right?
probity is not a fixed concept. It has changed.
It has changed over time. Even the definition of morality has changed in the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? Since our
So
independence.
I think for this a great example was I was reading a biography of Napoleon. And
Hmm.
Napoleon की biography में they were talking about the France of that times. This is just like post-revolution France. And
Hmm.
they're talking about that ki, one of the perks of being a minister at that point in time was that you had access to inside information. Insider trading was not illegal. So
It was,
it was
yeah,
something that ministers enjoyed. They knew what's going to happen because
it
they're
was
going to
legal.
the law.
Yeah,
It was not legal. It was not illegal. It's not ki
it
it's
was not
legal.
illegal.
It was not
Huh.
illegal. It was later on
It,
that it was made illegal. Ki now they're very, because after Harshad Mehta, everybody knows Harshad Mehta and the scam 1992. So
hmm.
after that, I think it's become a lot more common and understood in like common parlance कि भाई insider trading होती क्या है. It's
Yeah,
been outlawed in India ever since like maybe like 50s, 60s. But there was a time when insider trading was a normal thing कि भाई हाँ मतलब मंत्री है तो इनको तो पता ही होगा.
yeah, yeah. No,
So
absolutely. That's a very good
probity,
example. Yeah.
integrity, all of these things have changed.
Hmm. A lot of like, so for example, even I'll give you example from the civil services.
Hmm.
The nature of civil services when it was kind of created back in the British days was very different.
Yeah.
And the nature of civil services today is very different. And it is poles apart. Nature of civil services in British era was simply to extract revenue, to extract
Yes.
resources from the people and to
Hmm.
control the people. Law and order करना है, British rule रहना चाहिए. उसके लिए
पैसा
था.
लेना और डंडा मारना दो चीज.
हाँ, पैसा लेना डंडा मारना अब बिल्कुल ही चेंज हो गया नाउ इट वी आर ए डेवलपमेंट oriented state, we are a
Yes.
welfare state. So
Hmm.
now it is to actually reach out to people
Hmm.
and ensure that their needs are being addressed by us through government schemes, right? That is one.
Hmm.
Number two is डंडा मारना अब नहीं चलता. Now you can be an IAS collector whatever, right? Or you can be a constable on the street, you can be a पटवारी. आपको बंदे से बात करके रिजॉल्व करना पड़ेगा because it's a democracy now. We are not living in a we are not under foreign rule anymore. So people need to understand that nature, and even I think civil services have changed that way, and a lot of civil servants are changing that way. That attitude has to change. That so I think तो मोरालिटी दोनों में अलग हो गई ना, रोल भी अलग हो गया. उस टाइम पे भाई किसी को भी कुछ भी कर सकते थे, अब क्या है, अब एक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है आपके हाथ में.
But then again,
तो
एक वही वाली
वो
चीज है ना यहाँ पे. It's connecting back to the entire idea कि understood the core of what it is,
या या
you'll get to it. Then the core of it was revenue, और revenue
हम्म
नहीं आया तो डंडा. That's
हाँ
it. कि भैया पैसा
या
चाहिए, पैसा ला रहे हो तो बहुत ही बढ़िया है, नहीं ला रहे हो तो डंडा मारो.
डंडा मारो
Now
या
it's a completely different thing wherein the IAS officer in charge of the district is supposed to bring around development. They're supposed to reduce poverty. They're supposed to ensure that people who are supposed to receive benefits are receiving benefits.
रिसीविंग बेनिफिट्स
And
या
this is a very, very different role from ki bhai revenue and danda.
या
So
या
because the role has become more complex, then therefore the demands from the IAS officers have also become more complex. And this is one of the reasons why I feel that वो होता है ना कि it's a very common saying कि like the steel frame has corroded.
हम्म
क्यों corroded? क्योंकि भैया पहले it was a very very simple metric.
या
एक metric था, revenue meet हो गया, very good, done. Well,
या
that's it.
या
Now the
ट्रू
metrics are 100. कि
या
like has the poverty reduced, has the education level improved, has like out ये outcome हुआ है क्या भाई, मतलब revenue कितना आ रहा है, उसमें से tax collection कितना, मतलब like you're supposed to do everything. So
या
naturally जो report card आएगा, it will not be A plus always. It can't be A
या
plus because there are so many things that you have to take care of. What do you think कि मतलब
या
what kind of a like how hectic is your job in these terms कि how would you rate good performance by an officer in the district?
It is a very hectic job. Like, to be honest, it is a very challenging job. It requires you have to think very broadly about a lot
Mm.
of things at the same time. So you brought up the thing about the steel frame of India, right? It has.
Mm.
I will put it in a very simple way that it is. You cannot just simply call it a steel frame anymore.
Mm.
It has to. The definition of the entire steel frame also has to be changed.
Yeah.
Now we don't live in foundations anymore.
Mm.
We don't. Our country is very different than it was during the British times. So more than the steel frame, now I think civil servants play the role of facilitations in a lot of ways. You know,
Okay.
it is a trusted institution in the district. It is a trusted institution at the national, at the state level.
Mm.
So now your role becomes of that provides solutions for problems and that makes sure that everyone in the district comes together and works.
Mm.
So various departments. I have 12 departments directly under me, 16 departments indirectly under me. I have to make them work together. Like वो अलग अलग काम नहीं कर सकते. They have to talk to each other. They have to
Yeah.
और सबको एक साथ काम कराना है.
Mm.
मतलब just imagine the amount of subject education, health,
Coordination.
coordination. I have 20,000 employees. If I count all my direct, I'm saying not even indirect, all they are responsible to me. So
Yes.
that is a massive amount of machinery. And do you think any any organization, let private organization which has 20,000 people under it, under a certain CEO or
Mm.
whatever it is, right? It is easy to run it. It is very difficult to run that organization. It probably took years and years to get it there. Number one,
Mm.
it was probably a startup at some time and it became a big company. And then just continue. And on top of that, you are delivering product that you are not just selling something. You know,
Mm.
you are actually providing, you are executing schemes that are very complex. Like अभी लोग प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना की बात करते हैं, building a house
Yeah.
for a poor person, right? It's very difficult. It might seem very simple to read it on a piece of paper कि इतने houses बनाने हैं, इतना एक बंदे को 1,20,000 रुपए देने हैं. This is the motive of the scheme. But when you go to actually get it done on the field, it is very difficult. People migrate. They are not
Mm.
able to build their houses because they migrate. So they are migrated for 6 months. So you have delayed by 6 months. They might not have materials. उनके
Mm.
पास materials ही नहीं है. वहां पे रेती नहीं मिलती, वहां पे सीमेंट नहीं मिलता. So these challenges you are not, people don't understand कि ये फील्ड पे क्या challenges होते हैं चीजों के जो
Mm.
दिखते नहीं है. तो I think that way it's a very challenging job because when you are delivering these things, so many random facts come into play that you yourself are not able to predict them. कि यार
Mm.
ये भी हो सकता है, ये भी हो गया, अरे ये भी हो गया, अब इसको सॉल्व करो. तो ऑनगोइंग हमारा फायर फाइटिंग चलता रहता है. ऑनगोइंग कुछ ना कुछ प्रॉब्लम चलता रहेगा, फायर फाइटिंग चलता है, एग्जीक्यूशन प्लानिंग से लेके एग्जीक्यूशन में वो सब चलता रहता है. तो दैट्स व्हाई इट इज बिकम अ वेरी डिफिकल्ट जॉब. बट एट द सेम टाइम it's very rewarding if you you know
Mm.
kind of if you do something and you see the results in front of you. It's very rewarding. अगर लॉन्ग टर्म भी कुछ होता है तो इवेंचुअली आपको कहीं फ्यूचर में कहीं रिजल्ट दिखेंगे, तो उस तरह से बहुत सारा
इट्स अ
आपको
वेरी
सेटिस्फैक्शन.
मीनिंगफुल जॉब आई फील कि आप
हाँ.
जो भी कर रहे हो, इट्स नॉट जस्ट फॉर यू, it's
हम्म.
for like the 20,000 people that you have under you, like you're CEO of Zilla Parishad in Jalna, Maharashtra,
हम्म.
right?
हम्म.
So you are effectively in charge of the district administration,
हम्म.
and that means ki the district ka well-being is something of a responsibility for you,
हम्म.
and that is a massive massive responsibility. मतलब कभी कभार मुझे लगता है कि मैं अपनी जिम्मेदारी नहीं ले सकता हूँ. कभी कभार you just have those days like अब नहीं करना मुझे कुछ आज. Right?
Yeah, yeah,
Everybody has those days,
yeah.
but for you, for example, in this role, even if you have that day, you've still got to show up for the like 10 lakh log in
Yeah.
your district.
You
You
have to,
can't,
yeah.
there's no holiday from that.
Yeah.
And that I feel is like, if done well, it's a very, very rewarding experience, because then people will remember the person who did so well for the district, the
Yeah.
person who like essentially I think this is something that my father was in government service, not government service, he worked in a PSU housing board, and
Hmm.
so that's also part of the reason why I have a case against me. Ki
Hmm.
PSU versus government. But what happens is ki matlab, I've seen like people come meet him years later, and they remember him for being like an effective individual in his role.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is what I see like good government servants as. कि if you're an effective individual, you will impact so many lives you don't even know.
या
कि भाई आपने बहुत छोटी सी चीज एक में भी करवाई होगी कि आपने सीवर लाइन स्ट्रेट करवा दी होगी, या मे बी आपने एक पार्क को ब्यूटिफाई करवा दिया होगा, विच इज लाइक इनसिग्निफिकेंट इन योर डे टू डे list of things to do,
हम्म
but that made such a drastic impact on somebody's life that
I'll
it,
tell you one thing, like, no, I totally like, I think from this, I just remember this. I think one of the most underrated things in the world,
mm,
I'm not talking about सिविल सर्विसेज, मैं जनरली बात कर रहा हूँ.
mm,
इनविजिबल इनविजिबल जो काम होता है ना लोगों का,
mm,
जो हम रोज कोई ना कोई कुछ कर रहा है, जो हमारी लाइफ बेटर कर रहा है, वो
mm,
इनविजिबल काम किसी को दिखता नहीं है. इट्स
mm.
लाइक द आइसबर्ग इफेक्ट. द आइसबर्ग इज ओनली 10%
10%
of
above
what
water, 90% below it.
90% underwater, right? So you don't see the 90%, so you don't appreciate the massiveness of it. You don't
Yeah.
appreciate कि इतना क्या उसका साइज है, क्या है वो, उसका क्या
Mm.
इफेक्ट पड़ता है. So similarly, we don't see the impact of this invisible work done by so many people in our lives. क्योंकि अभी हम ट्विटर, फेसबुक, इन सब चीजों पे अपना टाइम ज्यादा लगाते रहते हैं, तो वहां पे सब दिखाना है कि अच्छा हाँ दिखा दिया, ये दिखा दिया, वो
Mm.
दिखा दिया. बट if you look at, so much work is done without being noticed by
Mm.
so many amazing people, you
Yeah.
know. So I think that is what really drives things. That is
That
drives
is
the nation. Yeah.
always the driver, be it like I think I really also liked one of the other analogies that you were giving, ki you're the head of a 20,000 strong organization, and that itself is not an easy job. Like you told ki you have 12 departments directly under you, 16 departments indirectly under you, and people don't tend to realize ki just having a few departments under you is like a hell of a stressful job.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like you have to keep people in check. You have to ensure that they're working hard. You have to ensure that if they're working hard, they're recognized,
Yeah.
and if they're not, then they're penalized. But all of those
Penalized.
things, but like
Yeah.
incentives are aligned in such a way, and like the greater the scale of the organization, the harder that job gets. And I think it's, which is also one of the reasons why I felt ki IAS, IPS, and civil services in general is they're some of the most intense jobs that you can do in India and
Hmm.
even in the world probably, because like from day one, like your
Hmm.
first posting as an IAS IPS officer is like as SDM or ASP.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or not, sorry, DYSP, not ASP.
DYSP, not ASP, yeah, DYSP. Yeah.
DYSP, and that's also a massive job.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. You are right on the front lines. So I've
Mm.
worked in the private sector.
Mm.
Like a very well-defined corporate job. So
So what
I,
do you
and
feel was the difference?
massive difference. Massive difference. Like it was so well structured. Like when I started out in investment
Mm.
banking, it was like you have to.
Where were you working in investment banking?
I was in Barclays in New York. Yeah, yeah.
Bloody hell.
So, so
Nice.
I started out with this very specific. You have to make these presentations, PowerPoint presentation, Excel sheets. You have to do
Mm-hmm.
this analysis. That's what we were doing all day long, right? हमारे पास
Yeah.
numbers आते थे, उसको crunch करके निकालना है, right?
Mm.
And we had clients, we had to pitch to these clients. That's it. We were obviously on the lower rung of the entire system, right? Because
Mm.
just hired into it, but it was just like okay, ये हम अब एक IPO करने वाले हैं. Let's
Mm.
we are doing some IPO, so we have to do strategy analysis of that and just float it out, right?
Mm.
That's it. What It's a great skill to have, and that is also contribute. That is part of the entire economic juggernaut that we have, right? It's
Okay.
fine,
Mm.
but it's very limited, right? It's very tunnel vision if you think about it. Like if you do that for 20 years, can you see anything else in the world? What is happening
Probably
around you?
not.
I don't think so. But in this job, what you get to do is you get to see a very wide spectrum of things that you otherwise cannot, and you get to make decisions that will help those or make some changes on those things. So I get to understand, okay, this is how politico economy of Indian democracy works. There is a very strong political economy that's
Mm.
in place in rural India, even in urban India. पीपल डोंट हम सब अपार्टमेंट्स में रहते हैं शहर में, हमें कुछ पता नहीं होता. बट ये मैसिव एक पॉलिटिकल इकोनॉमी जगरनॉट चलता है इंडिया में, जो हम समझ ही नहीं सकते. बट
Mm.
वो मुझे देखने को मिला, एंड हाउ इट वर्क्स एंड हाउ इट्स सो इम्पोर्टेंट. And maybe we can have this discussion later in some other
Um,
chats कि what that is. Similarly, interest, how सोसाइटी में क्या क्या इंटरेस्ट होते हैं एक दूसरे से अलाइंड, लाइक गांव में क्या क्या चलता है.
mm.
गांव में इवेंचुअली अगर कोई कुआं खोदा जा रहा है, तो उसमें इतने कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स क्रिएट हो सकते हैं ना उसके अराउंड,
वेरी
तुम
ट्रू एक्चुअली।
समझ नहीं सकते, तुम्हें इतना इंसिग्निफिकेंट लगेगा वो,
हम्म।
but it matters to those 3,000 people who are in that village, and it
इट डज।
matters maybe, it might, so it might become a very important issue that, for that area, and it matters, it just matters, you can't help it, it matters. So इस तरह से बहुत सारी चीजें you get to see in the service, and you get to understand the society, and I think that's the biggest kind of reward, that you get to understand the psychology and the understand like the way people think in our country,
हम्म।
in wherever you live. तो वो बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है, तो मुझे लगता है वो बहुत रिवॉर्डिंग है, उससे काफी कुछ आप प्रैक्टिकली समझ सकते हो कि हाँ भी
एंड
कैसे। हाँ।
आई थिंक ओवरऑल द सर्विस फ्रॉम डे वन itself, from day
हम्म।
one itself, the service is like essentially exposing you to broader and more things. Like for example, it starts in the training itself. भारत
हम्म।
दर्शन होता है।
या।
भारत दर्शन में एग्जैक्टली क्या करा रहे हैं, तुमको वो हर लोकेशन पे लेके जाएंगे, तुम्हें वो हर ज्योग्राफिक क्लाइमेट में लेके जाएंगे, दिल शो यू एवरी लेवल एंड लेयर ऑफ गवर्नमेंट, दिल टेक यू फ्रॉम अ विलेज टू राष्ट्रपति भवन, everywhere, right? Like
या।
they'll go vertically, they'll go like geographically, horizontally,
हॉरिजॉन्टली। या।
everything they'll do, because they want this individual to be able to take a decision from that breadth of view.
Yes, broader perspective. Yeah. And that's, there's this debate about expertise versus
Mm.
generalist, right? And I find that debate to be so, like, so annoying, to be honest. Like, I'm like, there should be not be a debate between a specialist and a journalist. Both have a
Mm.
very important role to play,
Yeah.
both in administration, both in companies, both in countries,
Mm.
both in whatever, right? प्राइवेट कंपनीज में भी जर्नलिस्ट होते हैं, लोग पता नहीं क्यों नहीं समझ सकते इस चीज को कि सीईओज आर
There's
जर्नलिस्ट।
no, no, not just CEOs. There's a proper position for this. It's called a EIR, Entrepreneur in Residence.
या।
यार
दैट।
का कोई और रोल नहीं होता है, इट्स जस्ट कि लाइक दे आर डूइंग रैंडम थिंग्स एंड दे आर
ब्रांड। या।
सॉल्विंग, मतलब कुछ भी उनको दिख रहा है ब्रॉडर पिक्चर में, दे टेक अप अ प्रॉब्लम, टेक अ प्रोजेक्ट एंड दे जस्ट एग्जीक्यूट इट विद इन द फ्रेमवर्क ऑफ द कंपनी इटसेल्फ।
और उसको सॉल्व करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं।
यस।
या। एंड सिमिलरली स्ट्रेटेजिस्ट, पीपल हु आर
यस।
वर्किंग इन McKinsey Bain, these are journalists, these
हम्म।
are not your experts. So what I try to say is always, yes, you should have an understanding, in-depth understanding maybe of a field or two, right?
हम्म।
But try to also have a broader, because greatness will come with how broadly you can think, how visionary you are. It will not come with tunnel vision कि चिप को डिजाइन कर दिया आपने, वो वो
मतलब
करवा सकते हो।
I'm not saying कि it's the best thing. I think there is a lot of value in being able to dive that deeply as well. कि भाई
Yeah,
मतलब
there is
जैसे अब
there.
जो PhD scholars हैं, like for instance मेरी भाभी हैं, she has done PhD recently in atmospheric sciences. So I think she knows so much more about the weather patterns. मतलब we used to have these debates when I was starting out with my UPSC preparation, क्योंकि मुझे लगता था कि मुझे बहुत कुछ आता है, मतलब जो I know there are 5 different cloud types and all that bullshit कि भाई हाँ
Yeah.
4 मेरे को layers of atmosphere, and just talking to her has given me so much insight into कि भाई मतलब ये you're just at the ABCD, like things get more and more complicated from here on out. So I
Yeah.
think there is a lot to be gained if you go deep as well, but there's a lot to be gained if you grow horizontally as well.
Horizontally
And
wider as well. Yeah.
that I feel ki IAS, IPS, and civil services in particular are like some of those jobs which exist at nexus points. Ki,
Hmm.
let's say you're CEO Jalna, right? You have the ability, if you want to, you can deep dive into a particular topic, you can take up a case, you can make it a case study, you can make it an example. That's up to you. But in
Yeah.
general, by definition, your job is absolutely broad.
It's very broad. So I will give you an example of that.
Hmm.
So we are executing Jal Jeevan Mission, the
Hmm.
water supply scheme, drinking water supply scheme,
Hmm.
flagship scheme of the government of India right now. I had never thought in my life I would know what is ESR, elevated, reservoir.
Hmm.
Elevated reservoir is पानी की टंकी. That's a fancy word for, पानी की टंकी.
मतलब I've
तो
seen
मैंने पहली बार अच्छा।
स्वदेश, स्वदेश देखिए, शाहरुख
हाँ,
खान।
देखिए
तो
देखिए।
लाइक दैट्स वेयर आई नो एलिवेटेड रिजर्वोयर फॉर कि लाइक लास्ट में वो जो क्लाइमेटिक सीन होता है स्वदेश में, ही इज लाइक कि वो ऊपर वाली टंकी में ऐसा झाड़ फंस गया है तो उसकी वजह से पानी नहीं आ रहा, तो वो भाग के जा रहा है, झाड़ निकाल रहा है एंड ऑल दैट।
निकाल रहे हैं। या। So, we don't, so I dove into it, I dove deep into it. I understood entire physics and mechanics of how water systems can be built in a
हम्म।
village and in a big town. तो उसके लिए डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सिस्टम कैसा लगता है, पाइप कितने इंच का होना चाहिए,
हम्म।
मोटर कितने एचपी की होनी चाहिए, ठीक है, प्रेशर मेंटेन करने के लिए कहाँ कहाँ पे वैक्यूम, एयर वैक्यूम छोड़ने हैं, एयर पाइप,
हम्म।
मतलब ये सब चीजें मैंने कभी सोची नहीं होंगी जिंदगी में करूंगा, यू नो। बट व्हेन आई केम इनटू दिस रोल आई न्यू दिस इज important फॉर मी टू
हम्म।
अंडरस्टैंड, बिकॉज आई हैव टू गो टू द फील्ड एंड अंडरस्टैंड इट, so that I can actually take review of my engineers that what is going on, right?
Yeah.
It is not rocket science. You give 2 days to it, you can
हम्म।
understand what you need to understand. Of course, you don't have to go so deep into it that you
हम्म।
need to do a PhD into it. So
Very true.
that that is what the role of like us as civil servants is here, you know.
हम्म।
Broadly भी देखना है हेल्थ सिस्टम, अब हेल्थ सिस्टम में मैं ये नहीं समझूंगा इंजेक्शन कितने तरह के आते हैं, what kind of injections, but I try to understand, you know, what is needed where, you know,
हम्म।
and how you can make it easier to supply it, you know, PHCs, primary healthcare centers, और उससे ही इम्प्रूवमेंट आता है, बिकॉज ए जर्नलिस्ट व्यू भी होना जरूरी है, बिकॉज
हम्म।
अनलेस यू अंडरस्टैंड इट फ्रॉम अ ब्रॉडर पर्सपेक्टिव यू कांट improve it, then
Yeah.
you're too lost in the details. So I think I mean, this discussion has gone from, I don't know, from UPSC, studying for
I think
UPSC
we
to
started
whatever it
out
is.
with me asking you what are your favorite like social platforms and like this is one of the reasons why I feel ki I generally tend to talk to people that I find absolutely interesting, and you have been one of those people because I've been following your content for a while and I really like the way that you communicate. It's a very simple, straightforward, to the point, no bullshit, and like I think my style is a little similar. मतलब
Yeah.
रैंडम बकवास नहीं, काम की बात सीधा, लाइक समझ आ रही है
Yeah.
ठीक है, नहीं आ रही तो भाई बता दो, आई ट्राई एंड एक्सप्लेन इट इन अ डिफरेंट वे, बट दैट्स द बेस्ट आई कैन डू, आई कांट डू लाइक द फ्लफ.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like it's been absolutely brilliant. I think we've been talking for almost an hour, and
Mm.
because the video is in two parts, so maybe the people don't see like 25 30 minutes, 25 30 minutes, but we've been talking almost for an hour, and I think I'd but like it's a bit of a rushed ending, but I feel ki,
Yeah.
but I think you also have things to do, and it's been a pleasure talking to you, man, because you have a busy schedule. We've been trying to coordinate for some time, and you were
Yeah.
able to finally find time. Thank you for that.
No issues. No, we should have more conversations and we will try to, you
Definitely.
know, I think it'll be nice to maybe get more people into
Yes, can be
conversation. If you
done.
know any people, I know any people, because it's always nice to discuss around these ideas and to get new
Love,
things.
yes, absolutely,
Uh,
absolutely. And one last thing before we go, I have a friend from Jalna. I said ki, "Bale, please do say hi to Saurabh Runwal as
yeah.
CEO of Zilla Parishad
Yes.
Jalna."
Hi Saurabh, how are you?
Yeah.
Please try to get this video to 1 million likes.
हाँ मतलब Saurabh is working in YouTube, so I think he can help us with something of that sort. And with that, I think we'll call it a wrap for this video. Thank you, Manoj, for your time. And I think I'd like to take you up on that idea of like having a more of a panel discussion sort of a thing.
We'll do. And if you're ever in Aurangabad area, let me know. We can have a discussion here also. If I come to Delhi, I'll let you know. We'll sit down and have a
Definitely,
nice
man,
coffee chat.
definitely, and
Yeah.
that would be fun.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. Take care. Bye bye.
You too.